Have you ever been scrolling on Facebook Marketplace and you just find something you just, can't pass up? Yeah, that was me. This is it. It was a 1966 Ford Falcon. 4-door. I just saw it sitting there, looking all pretty. It's kind of rusty, I know, but I saw something in it. I don't really know why, but I just had to have it. So I did. I went and looked at it. It was rough. It had been sitting since the 90s, mid-90s at some point or another. But yeah, I went and looked at it. It looked all right. I didn't really get under it a whole lot. I saw the body and that it really was pretty rust-free for the most part. And so I was like, okay, sure, I got it. And so I loaded it up on a trailer. And I didn't have a trailer, so I had to pay some guy. Paid $500 for the car and like $500 to get the guy to bring it back home, and brought it back home. Got it home. I was happy. I was like, heck yeah, I have a car. I'll be driving this thing in a week. Keep in mind, this was summer of 2024 at this point. And so I looked at it. Probably took me about a week to get back out there with the trailer, then got it home. So 2024, I was like, okay, I'll drive this thing this summer, the end of this summer. This was probably mid-July. I was like, okay, I'll have it up and going by August. I'll take it to school. That did not happen. This is the shape that it came in. It was all original. Everything was there. It was really actually pretty nice. It was really pretty nice overall. Although the engine had low compression, and so the initial plans was to get it running, driving okay, replace the brakes, basic maintenance, just drive it how it was, have fun with it. So here I was, getting started on that before I really had attempted anything on the motor, using my hammer to whack it all apart. I had to use that a lot to replace the front suspension. And again, I wasn't planning on replacing any of it really, except the brakes and stuff that really it needed to have replaced at the time. And sorry, my bird started talking, so I hope it's not too loud in the recording. Anyways, started working on it. I was like, okay, we'll just do some basic maintenance. I put $1,000 in this thing, getting it back here. Put another $500 in it. So here it was. Here's the rear axle. New brakes on the rear. Just new drum brakes, factory stuff. It's like $200. No big deal. And well, you know what? While I'm in here, it's a little rusty. It's all solid. I was really impressed when I started getting under this thing. All the frame on it was solid, except like the back. The very, very back of the frame had some rust, but it really was not bad. The floor pans were gone, but overall this car was fairly structurally sound, and so I was really happy with that. So there I was. I got in there with an angle grinder and a really aggressive wire wheel, cleaned it all up, painted it with rust reformer, and then shot it with some black paint after that. And it started looking nicer. And I was like, okay, well, hey, let's go ahead and get in the car, tackle the floor pans, because I don't really want this to be a Flintstone mobile. As you can see, they were pretty bad. The frame under here was really pretty solid. The rockers were solid. Most of the trans tunnel was solid. Most of that was reusable. The frame under here, under the seats and everything, was actually really pretty solid once I replaced all of that. But yeah, so that's what it was. And again, at this point, I was like, okay, I'm trying to do this as cheap as I can. And so I just used scrap metal that I had on hand. That was free. I bent it vaguely into shape, and I did this with the transmission tunnel, kind of enlarging it just a bit, because I was like, well, I would like to get a manual in this thing, like a cheap four-speed top loader, do something like that. And so I enlarged it a little bit, hoping that maybe I would, but also I might just stick with the factory automatic that the car had. Also, I forgot to talk about anything about the specs of the car. It was an automatic car. Had an 8-inch rear end in it with 280 gears, and it was a 289 original car with factory AC and power steering, all the fancy stuff like that. None of it worked, obviously. I had to redo a lot of it, but it also had a 302 that was swapped in at a later date, but it had really, really low compression. So this was happening. All the thoughts, were kind of piling in. And I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to do this as cheap as I had thought. Because at this point, the floor pans getting mostly taken care of. I don't think I finished them around here, but I got them a lot better. And obviously it's not perfect. Just slamming some metal in there and making it work. It's solid, so who cares? Don't make fun of me. But you see, this is where it started to get a little crazy. You know, I was talking about the engine having low compression, and I started thinking, and I was like, well, you know, instead of, you know, trying to get this engine going again, why not just put another engine in? So I did. I pulled the engine out. There it is. I was able to get it cranking up, and I was spraying tons of starting fluid in it, and just it would not even fire. It had spark, just it would not fire. So I gave up on this one and thought I'd do something else. But this is where it really started getting kind of crazy, because I was like, okay, I have kind of a trick little engine. I stuck in a F-150, and, you know, it was pretty fun, but maybe it'd be more fun if I stuck it in a lightweight car that I have already started removing just about everything on it, so it can be even more lightweight. And so there it begun. Engine was pulled out. Here it was right after I, you know, took the intake off and everything, because I'm not going to keep this whole EFI intake on there in this Falcon. But yeah, this is where it really started to get crazy. On the fronts, I hadn't done the front brakes yet, and so I was like, well, you know what? I think it'd be worth the investment to go ahead and just, for one thing, redo the entire front suspension, and then for a second thing, put on these nice Willwood brakes, so I have disc brakes up front. And, you know, thankfully I did that, because that was actually a really good decision. Disc in the front is necessary, and I had to use a sketchy tool that I made to get this all installed. But brand new front suspension, new lower, upper arms, the new saddle here for the spring, new springs, everything brand new, new shocks, and I redid all the steering as well, and I converted it to manual steering as well. I kept the factory steering box, but I got a manual pitman arm and then a manual drag link, and then so I got rid of the power steering and new strut rod. I don't remember what these are called. But then it's that. This has started taking a lot longer than I had thought. You remember I was talking, I'd be done by August. Well, this was probably, I want to say early November. I parked it. It didn't run or drive. There was no engine in it anymore, but it was a lot farther ahead than it had been. It had new wheels and tires on it now. It rolled. That's good. It steered. Like, wow. So anyway, it was wintertime. I hadn't gotten it done. It had taken a lot longer. It had been a lot of grueling work, honestly, doing a lot of the rust repair on the floors, and so I was just kind of burned out a little bit. But it soon came along again. Maybe I should mention another part of the reason it got parked was I ended up started talking to a girl, and, well, you know how that goes. It kind of sucks up all your time. But that quickly ended, and I was like, well, as any guy does, time to build a sports car again. So I got the brakes finished up. I got a Willwood master cylinder for it. I redid the whole, I don't really have any pictures of it, unfortunately, but I redid the whole brake pedal. I cleaned it up, and then I ended up converting it. I don't know if you can really see there above it. I converted it with grade 8 hardware, and then actually I removed the studs and put welded nuts on here, so I just used bolts instead of having studs, which I don't really know if it's any better or not, but sure, I did that. So used the factory brake pedal. It was cool. And again, I was like remotivated again after post breakup or whatever. And so yeah, I started tackling some stuff again in the winter, and this was all inside because it was freezing cold outside. Got a little heater, started warming up the garage, and started tackling the other stuff I could do for free, because I was like, well, crap, I had already spent $1,500 on the brakes, and I've spent $1,000 on this car. That's too much. So I went ahead and started doing some free stuff again. Started throwing in some new sheet metal, and by this point, I had started getting a little better. I say better. By far, I'm not a professional, so don't make fun of me. But I was using scrap metal and just making it cheap, so I got that done. But then again, the interest kind of died. It was cold out. I couldn't really do anything with it. It was snowing out, and I was like, this is kind of miserable. And this is entering into 2025 at this point. This is probably a couple months later, 2025, probably, oh gosh, I want to say around March or April. Kind of started like just thinking about having some money, and had some money burning a hole in my pocket. And I was like, well, what other thing to spend it on than the car? I decided against using the C4 transmission, and because I was just like, I want a manual car. I had a manual truck before this, and I was like, man, I missed that. I had to have a manual in this thing. I could not go with an automatic. So I sold the C4, got like nothing for it. But I ended up picking up a T5 here, and T5s are pretty weak as they are. So I'm putting a pretty snazzy little engine in this thing, and this thing might not hold up to it. So I ended up going to a guy who rebuilds them, and he actually, apparently, has rebuilt quite a few of them and does a pretty good job at it. So this was like $2,000 for this because it had this fancy schmancy little gear set in it. It's supposedly rated for 450 horsepower, so hopefully a little bit stronger than the factory one. You can see here's one of those newer gear sets compared to like the factory gears, and here's all the gears compared. They're a lot thicker, and so again, the idea is that they'll hold a lot more power. So I got that. Starting to get into it again. It's starting to get nice out. It's spring now, probably, again, March or April. I think probably late March is when this started happening. I was like, well, it's nice out. So I rolled it out, started finishing up the rear floors that I had started, got them done, and, started getting into it again. Ordered a ton of parts. This is when I started spending just boatloads of money because I was like, well, I had already spent this on it and already done that. So why not just, go all out? So I did. Here's the motor. Pulled it apart, got a new 8-quart front sump oil pan specifically for the Ford Falcon, or so Summit Racing said. They said it fit the Ford Falcon, and it did. But the drain plug was on the very back of this thing, and it actually almost touches the frame. So when I have to change the oil on this thing, I'm gonna probably just drill and put a new one on the bottom of it. But anyways, that aside. Did a fancy oil pan. I believe I put a new oil pump, and then I obviously had to do a new pickup. Got a Summit Racing front balancer. I was able to reuse the water pump cover because thankfully the trucks actually had one that was compatible with the Serpentine system. Also, I was going to try and use the truck's Serpentine system, and I was going to do this as cheap as I could. This ended up not going cheap. I ended up buying a whole Serpentine kit, which you'll see later. But anyways, kept the heads on there because they were good heads. I actually ended up breaking an ARP stud off while torquing down the intake manifold. So either that was just me being an idiot and I did something stupid, or my torque wrench was not reading right. So either way, I ended up making my little passenger princess, taking the head over to machine shop, getting that fixed up because I didn't really want to mess up these heads. So I had them do that. Continued putting the engine together. Got the intake on after, got the head back. New set of bolts. Didn't have them snap this time, so I don't know what that was all about. New bell housing. Found the blocking plate. I actually forgot this. I was going to put the engine in the car like a couple weeks before these pictures. I was like, dang it, I forgot something. I forgot the blocking plate. And so I ordered that from Modern Driveline. And so that kind of was a little upsetting because I was going to get it in before the rain, and then it started raining, and so a couple weeks later. But anyways, did get it done. ARP hardware throughout, and so obviously the price up. Prices, unfortunately, go crazy. But got this nice billet steel flywheel from Ford Racing or Ford Performance, one of them. Got a nice little ram clutch. New bell housing, got the transmission test fitted. Everything was great. So, and you can't forget, new pilot bearing, because this engine had an automatic behind it, so I put one of those in there. Obviously I had to. So at this point, engine was not in the car yet, but it was built, ready to go. But I was like, okay, well, I got to wait on those parts from Modern Driveline. So I went ahead and tackled the trunk, something I'd been putting off because I had finished up the floor pans as best as I really cared to in the front. And I was like, oh boy, I do not want to do the trunk. So I was putting that off, but I was like, okay, well, I have nothing better to do. So I did it. I really didn't do a great job at it, but I just, buffed it down, tried to clean up most of the rust on the bottom here. Took out the fuel tank that was not going to be used. I had a big hole in the bottom. And as you can see, there's holes, a little bit of holes through here. And I patched them up, put a patch on there, patched up this side here, and painted it in primer. So a lot better than it was anyway. Skip some. And then put the engine in. This was probably the hugest moment ever. Engine was in the car, so that was a big moment. I got the transmission in as well, and it was held up with a jack, and I tied a rope under it to hold it up for a little while until I could modify the cross member, actually get the transmission in at the proper angle. But got that done. Here's a picture of the inside of the car. I just thought I'd throw this in here. And as you can see, at this point, I've started really kind of gutting the car because I was going to just drive it as it was, but after all this, I wasn't going to put carpet in here. So I was like, well, maybe I'll build a little bit of a little street race car. So gutted it all. All of it's gone. Started going crazy. But here's that Serpentine belt kit I was talking about. Put that on the front of the engine. And that's kind of what I was waiting on there. Really, before I could fire up the engine, is I need a Serpentine set on here, so I can have some water going through the engine if I'm going to break it in or do anything like that. Got a radiator on here, and I ended up having to fit it in between the front grille and the little cross brace, or the radiator support, the original one. So I had to remove the hood latch, and so I just used hood pins. But did that. The radiator kind of leans forward at kind of a funny angle, but it works. Hood shuts all the way, so I'm happy with that. And then I put a fuel cell in it, because obviously I've been debating whether going with the factory fuel system or aftermarket, and I was like, well, this is easier. And especially at some point I might have to, okay, and this is just, again, that crazy brain of just like money, dumping money into this thing. So why not eventually someday maybe put fuel injection in it? So I went with something that I can upgrade easily later, that I can put a fuel return line, and I can just put a Holley blue pump down there to run the fuel. And since I was switching to a manual, and I did not feel like buying a manual pedal assembly and using a Z-bar and all that, I used a hydraulic clutch, and I made a bracket that I could put in here that removed the original parking brake cable, or parking brake assembly, and so I put in a Wilwood clutch pedal and a little master cylinder for the clutch, and then I used a modern driveline T5 hydraulic conversion kit with a slave cylinder. And then it went crazier. This is, I think, where it really started just going as crazy as I could. This is probably the biggest one-piece investment I made in the car. It was the transmission at one point, and then it was this. Ended up... Okay, so back to the whole thing about waiting to start the engine up because I need coolant, but I also needed fluid in the transmission, and you can't put fluid in the transmission until you get a yoke in the transmission, so it doesn't all pour out the back. And I was just debating there for probably a month or two, just like, should I use the factory 8-inch, or am I just going to blow that up? And also the gearing is going to be highly slow and really long because it's a 280 rear gear, and the transmission had, I think, a fairly tall first gear compared to the other T5s because it was a T5Z spec gear set. So I was like, well, I don't really want to do that. The 8-inch, and I don't really want to spend, $1,000 to get a proper 8-inch center section with the gearing I want and new axles and all that stuff. So I just bought a 9-inch. So this is a quick performance 9-inch. I had them custom make it for me for the Ford Falcon. It's the same width as a Mustang, except I had to have them move the actual leaf spring mounts on it. And then I got a 389 rear gear with a posi. I believe it's just a track lock, something like that, and then an aluminum center section. So that was plenty of money on that. They actually ended up sending me the wrong width at first. They had misread something I had typed in the instructions about the width, and so they put it at the factory Mustang width, which didn't fit. But they quickly resolved the issue and sent me one with the proper width fit. So I painted it, got it all built and put together. And also, keep in mind, this is also going to four-wheel disc. So I converted a rear disc with just Explorer disc brakes in the rear. So got it in. It's the biggest thing I had ever done on this car. So it was like, at this point I had spent so much money on it, I was just kind of like, spare no expense. And I don't know if that was wise, but anyway, it's been fun. So it's more fun building new parts, I will say. But, continue going crazier. I just one time just got the weird possession to just rip all the wiring out. So I did. I ripped all the wiring out, got a painless wiring kit, and started putting it all in here. And I actually, because I had gutted everything, I was like, well, I kind of want the electrical to be up here in the glove box so it's easier to access. So I put the fuse panel in there, put my relays, because I have all my relays for my fan and my water pump and my fuel pump separately put in here just so that I can, I guess, easier access them and have them on a separate circuit than the actual custom kit. So anyway, doesn't really matter. But I put it in the glove box, which I think is kind of cool, just so it's kind of like you pop it open and there's your wiring. There's all your fuses, easy to change, easy to maintenance, and so cool. Here's a picture of the engine, now been completed, and with all the wiring completed. Got all cleaned up in here with looms and everything. I used an HEI distributor because I didn't want to mess around with all the Ford distributor stuff. I'm just like, okay, this thing's far from factory, so I just did the easy route. Put a Holley or Brawler 650 on there. At this point, the coolant system was going, and at this point, I think I'd also been firing up, and I've been driving it a little bit, slowly but surely. I need to probably mention too, I did end up getting a drive shaft in here and finally firing up the engine for the first time, because now that I had the rear end in place, I could order the proper drive shaft length with the right ends and U-joints, and then get the proper yoke. And so then I was able to fill the transmission, and then I was able to fire the engine. And I'll put a video of that in here. All right, and that is the end. I'll probably put some videos here in the end of it running and everything, but that's it. That is the full build. Full build has probably cost quite a bit of money. I don't even think I should say. Quite a bit of money. Probably more money than I should have in this $500 car. But it's been fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. The little clips I'm going to put in here, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you guys in another video.